Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely. You're joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a fun show for you guys today. We're previewing USC's homecoming matchup against Arizona back in the friendly confines of the Coliseum. We'll be talking about USC's injuries. Those are adding up. We have the latest from Clay Helton in his Thursday night press conference, so we'll get to that pretty soon. And we'll talk about a banged-up defense trying to stop Khalil Tate, which is the dual-threat guy that USC will face this season. So we'll be previewing all that, talking about all that good stuff. And, of course, wherever you're watching, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, put your comments, questions, concerns, and we will answer them. You can also call us, 512-4TUNNEL. Talk to us directly. Always a fun time talking to you guys. And then you can also tweet at us, #TunnelVision, and I will put your tweet up on the screen. But, guys, like I said, USC has a lot of injuries, USC's secondary in particular. So we have a little bit more information now after Clay Helton's press conference. So we know now that Palaie Na Ote is going to be out. We knew earlier in the week that Greg Johnson was also ruled out. So those two guys are gone for the game against Arizona. ITS, Isaac Taylor Stewart, is a game time decision. He was able to do like 6 periods of practice so far on Thursday with that high ankle sprain, but we'll see about that. And then Elijah Griffin is doubtful with that bulging disc that he has. So it doesn't look good for him. I would probably lean on he's not going to play on Saturday. So you have Kanai Mauga going to replace EA, and then Max Williams in for Greg Johnson at that nickel spot. But guys, like I said, Khalil Tate is no easy task, and this defense is going to be banged up. How do you expect this one to go?
Yeah. Well, Keely, you're barely in the lead. You're talking about all the injuries and stuff. That's a big deal. Look at our cool new graphics. We got
Ta-da!
some cool stuff here. Look, some down here. I think
Well done,
I'm doing
right?
that right.
You're
Does that
doing
look
it well.
good?
Yeah, well done.
So we changed it up a little bit. We actually had some complaints. People were like, oh, I don't like the color scheme, whatever. So we changed it up a little bit. A little more screen, a little more of us.
Yeah.
You know,
no.
That's what Shotgun wanted. We wanted more Shotgun.
Don't you want more of us?
Yeah, but big deal. USC trying to stop this Arizona offense. Not just Khalil Tate. They have a really deep group of running backs. J.J. Taylor is a guy you know. Brightwell might not play in this one. I don't think he played last week. But they got a bunch of guys they can rotate in. They're second in the conference in rushing right now. They've led the conference the last 3 years in rushing. So USC had a hard time stopping the run against Notre Dame. You got to be a little concerned with Arizona coming in as one of the best rushing teams in the conference. It's kind of a weird situation with Khalil Tate because there actually might be a quarterback controversy in Arizona. Grant Gunnell, you see him, he's more of a like a strong-armed quarterback. It'd be a little different offense if he comes in there. So if Tate struggles, and he's played, this is the 4th time he's played against USC.
Yeah.
Hasn't had a ton of success against the Trojans, but the way USC was giving up runs to an Ian Book, who's not necessarily known for
his
running,
mobility,
we haven't seen Khalil Tate take off and run as much this year, but it might be a thing where, well, it works pretty well against USC. He does a little more banged up in the secondary, like you said, EA not being in there. But I like the way Kanai Mauga plays. We'll see, but it's you got to be concerned with Arizona's run game because they're top 10 in the country in total offense, almost 510 yards per game. So on paper, it looks like a pretty tough matchup for this defense. It's going to be banged up, Shaka.
It's definitely a tough matchup because, like you talked about with Grant Gunnell, Clay said even earlier this week that it's kind of like you have to have a mini game plan for 2 different style of offenses because if Gunnell comes in, it's a completely different offense. You scrap the zone read stuff and you go more with straight passes and different things. So you're kind of preparing for 2 offenses here, not just 2 quarterbacks, which makes it a lot different. And you said Khalil Tate hasn't really done anything against USC. He did run for 161 yards as a sophomore.
Oh, okay.
So that was a pretty good one. I think that was the closest of the games that they've had. I think that was the high scoring one back at at the Coliseum the last time when.
Oh yeah, that wasn't the Coliseum.
When
Yeah,
Ronald
yeah.
Jones had the nice catch down
Yeah.
the sideline. That was a.
Was that the check down touchdown, like Hail Mary?
No,
one?
that was
That was
against Texas.
Texas.
That was
yeah.
Texas game. Okay.
But
yeah.
the one where he ran a wheel route and he made a nice catch, and Ronald Jones had not been known for his hands at all.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was a great play by Sam Darnold getting on the pocket as well. That was a game where they pulled away a little bit late, I think. I had to look up the score. But, Khalil Tate's legs gave them issues. And that's something that any game when you come in, he's going to be in that backfield is, okay, you got to prepare for that.
Yeah.
USC has struggled with scrambling quarterbacks, especially, this year, throughout the season. Ian Book is as mobile as a guy that gets out of the pocket and can get some yards, but it's no one in the country is like Khalil Tate.
Yeah.
He is a power runner that can also throw the ball 60 yards.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Clancy Pendergast said he could just drop back and throw a dime 75 yards. So he said he was pretty impressed with Khalil Tate. But to his credit, like you said, he's kind of been able to figure him out.
Yeah, they've won each of the games against them, but that's a lot of times that's the other cast that you're looking at. They've slowed down the rushing attack of J.J. Taylor and some of the others. It's a much different running attack than what you saw from Notre Dame. Notre Dame was power right at you style, big running back. J.J. Taylor's 4'8". What is he actually listed at? I don't know. He's short.
He's not real big.
He's a small guy. He's a scat back more than the power that you saw from Antonio Jones Jr. last week. Tackling is very important still, but it's a different style of tackling. It's not just wrapping up and making sure you pull a guy down. When the big guy, it's making sure you keep your feet moving and don't let him juke you type of thing. Now, we had Taylor on Sunday, and he said he much prefers the big guys. But I think that's also coming from Taylor, who's 6'4".
Happens to be a big guy.
Yeah. It's easier to hit a big guy that's a little bit slower for Taylor than a small scat back guy that can try to make you miss. I think it's huge, the particular injuries that USC has.
Yeah.
Because with Khalil Tate's ability to expand the pocket, to get out of the pocket, to when the pocket breaks down, to run, your nickelback and your will linebacker, and also the Mike, John Houston, but those two guys, Palia Natiote and Greg Johnson, are huge in containing that. If you play zone, you may leave Greg Johnson shallow, and you're looking to see if a quarterback goes. They don't have a true guy that just spies them. When they've gone in pass rush situations and spied, it's been Hunter Echols. And I don't like that matchup with him against Tate. There's no one really on the roster that you say that's a great matchup for it. You would look more for a safety type that you can bring in, and maybe a guy like Chase Williams. Like maybe you have a specialty role for someone. It's not necessarily something that Clancy's done a ton of, but maybe that's something you look at is having a guy that's a little bit bigger that can wrap up and make the tackles. Is a sure tackler, but is quick enough to move with someone. And that's a hard combination to find. Palia Natiote is, he struggled with his angles at times this year, but he's got that, speed and power combo that you look for in a game like this against a quarterback like Tate. Yeah. So him being out, we know he's out, and Greg Johnson being out, I think there's a lot of question marks. And then who's going to play nickel? Because if ITS, Isaac Taylor-Stewart is not able to go, I would think that they would move Max Williams outside. I don't know for sure, but he's got that skill set that you can put him out there. So if that happens, then who plays nickel? Is it Kalana McCullough, who came in last week in the Notre Dame game? Is it Chase Williams? They said that they're saving him and keeping him at safety and want him to back up those two safety spots. But you played him 3 snaps early in the game at nickelback, so don't tell me that we want to.
He didn't forget about how to play nickel.
That was a really weird conversation that they had there a couple of days ago at practice. So, so who fills in those spots and can they step up? Max Williams did a great job of stepping up in that first quarter of the Washington game. Steps in the hole, shows he's not afraid to be a tackler. So that's a great option. However, he's still a smaller guy, and Khalil Tate is a huge dude. Coming at you, and he's kind of a freight train coming downhill.
Yeah.
And he can make you miss at the same time. That's what makes him so unique. So I think it's a really tough challenge with the injuries that USC has. This is going to be one that beginning of the season you might look at it and say, "Oh, Arizona, that's a win for USC." After they lose to Hawaii, that's a definite win for USC. But then things start adding up, and it's like this matchup has gotten a lot more difficult with what has happened in the last week with the injuries for them.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, Keely.
Yeah.
Sorry. HPOSCAR on Periscope says no Taylor Mays this week. So we had Taylor come in last week. I went to the Chargers-Steelers game. We're going to try to work him in more to the tunnel vision rotation, but you can always catch him on our pregame show. So the Peristyle pregame show, Keely does a great job interviewing him. So a whole segment of like 12 minutes of Taylor Mays breaking down.
Yeah, we
the
really
game.
preview the game hard, more than we do on Tunnel Vision.
Yeah. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be KABC, which is 790 a.m. on your dial, if you still have one of those. Here in Los Angeles, midnight on Friday before the games. For Colorado, we'll do it Thursday night before the game. But we'll also put it up in a podcast form, too. So make sure you check that out. So you can get Taylor every week, and we'll try to get him more on the Tunnel Vision, too.
Yeah. But to your point, Shotgun, about USC's defense and how that could be a struggle, how much more does that put the onus on USC's offense to really get it done this week? And especially against the Arizona defense that has struggled. They're not great statistically speaking. This would be the week to step up and have that 55-point game that Graham Harrell talked about during the preseason.
Yeah, the game that Khalil Tate ran for 161 yards and a touchdown, he brought them back. Remember, they were down early, but USC won 49-35. So, if you put 49 points up on the board, you expect to win. Yeah. You give up, that's giving up 5 touchdowns, but you still won by 2. So I think the offense is a big key for them. The tempo is something that I'm curious to see. They talked about going, Clay Helton talked about, hey, we want to go up tempo this week, which is kind of giving away your game plan to an extent. So you wonder if they're being complete 100% honest there, or if it's a little gamemanship. But they did really well with that in the second half of the Notre Dame game. So that's kind of the talk. Like, we want to go up tempo. We want the offense to do that. But in this game, with the injuries that they have on the defensive side, I would pull back the reins in this game. I would do the opposite. I would say, let's try to make sure we score. And I think because the athletes that, if I'm the coach at USC, I say, I think because the athletes we have, we can execute, especially against this defense. Their secondary has really struggled, with passing yards and stuff. I think we can score almost every time we touch the ball. I don't think we need to rush ourselves and make a mistake and give them the ball, and at the same time rushing our defense back on the field and making a guy like Marlon Tuipulotu, you get in a shootout, and now your defensive tackles are playing 70, 80 plays, because you don't have a ton of depth at some positions. Is John Houston going to be out there for 100 plays? Isaiah Pola-Mao played 92 this past week. He's averaging over 80 plays, 80 snaps a game. The only player on USC's team. But are you going to put all those guys, because you're not rotating extra guys in? You've done a little bit of that in the past, but it hasn't been the case. You haven't seen anyone rotating. You haven't seen Chase Williams rotating in at the safety spot at all to give those guys a little bit of breather. You don't have the corners now to rotate them in. Chris Steele is going to be out there on an island pretty much, I think. And he's been a guy that's had to come out of a couple drives due to, fatigue and some things like that. So we'll see where they go with that, and what happens if you get another injury?
Yeah.
You're forcing in extra plays. If you speed up the tempo and you have an injury in the first half, say, that's that many extra plays you're forcing a true freshman to play in Kaulana Makala or Max Williams or Jaden Williams or, Britton Allen or Adonis Oti. Those are your guys. All your backups are true freshmen.
Yeah.
So that have no experience pretty much, a quarter at most for Max Williams and Kaulana. So, if you speed up the tempo, you're saying we trust those guys to play that many more plays, which I would say I trust my offense to execute enough that we'll score even if we slow things down.
Yeah. On the offensive side, real quick, Arizona's defense, certainly not the best statistically, but if you watch them throughout the season, they've got better. They were terrible against Hawaii. And Hawaii looks like a pretty good team. I mean, they've scored a bunch of points. They have a really kind of unique offense. They've definitely got better. Marcel Yates, I think it's his 4th year at Arizona. There was a lot of pressure on him as the defensive coordinator. I think their second game was a FCS opponent that scored like 41. Now, Washington scored 51 on them last week. But you have the way the offense was turning the ball over. One of the plays, Khalil Tate basically threw the ball backwards, and Washington just had to walk into the end zone. Like it looked like he was trying to throw it away, but he was facing the wrong direction. Threw it backwards. And then the Washington defender picks it up and walks into the end zone. And the average field position for Washington was the 44-yard line. So it's not like this was an Arizona defense that just got boat raced by a Washington offense that's been a little suspect at times. So they've got better. They're definitely capable of doing what seems to be USC's kryptonite, of dropping 8 guys into coverage. That's part of their package. Jace Whitaker is their best corner, and they might play him in the nickel, so he could be lined up against an Amon-Ra. St. Brown, they got good linebackers. Colin Schooler makes a bunch of plays. So it'll be an interesting matchup. It's definitely, don't underestimate the Arizona defense. I think they've got a lot better. And if the offense doesn't put them in some horrible positions like happened last week, I mean, Arizona was beating Washington at halftime, and then it just kind of the wheels fell off. So.
And right before halftime, he threw, I think it was a pick six, or a pick right to a guy. It was a very bad pass. That's one of the plays I did see last week, but he just threw it up. There was like 5 defenders around one guy. I was like, what are you doing? That's not a play you can make. And that's the other side of Khalil Tate. Can you force him into turnovers? USC has not turned teams over a bunch this season, but they were really the offense was clean last week. No turnovers. Still didn't win the turnover battle.
No,
because they haven't been able to force them. Now they did some against Fresno State. They were doing great with the rips and stuff. Someone needs to be a ball hawk. Someone needs to come in and make an interception, and because interceptions more than fumbles go the other direction.
Yeah,
a lot of times, especially if you catch them shallow, those shallow routes when they're trying to run them, pick them off, it's gone. Pick six. Is a guy like Max Williams. He's a ball hawk now. He's been, ever since we've seen him originally, he's a guy that's always around the ball, always makes plays in that regard. And those are the kind of players that are sometimes tough to scout as far as recruiting and stuff for coaches because he doesn't have the ITS measurables. He's not 6'2". He doesn't run a 4.3. Like Isaac Taylor Stewart has all the measurables you could ever ask for. But Isaac Taylor Stewart, when's the last time we saw him get an interception?
Yeah.
He doesn't have the same ball skills, the ball hawk ability, and that's something he'll work on as his career. And that's one of the areas I think he'll continue to improve at USC. Let's not forget he's only a redshirt freshman, and he's been playing great. Chris Steele's been playing great. Elijah Griffin, that cornerback group has been playing great. But can someone now create an impact play? The thing, you come in the season, you go, let's hope the secondary doesn't kill USC. Let's hope they don't get burned all the time. They've done really well with that. Now you take the next step. You're halfway through a season. You've got a half a season of experience now for all those guys. Now can you take that next step? In basketball, baseball, I always say in baseball it's easier for me just the numbers wise, but through 25 games or so is about halfway through a college baseball season. And every freshman you see go one of two ways. No one stays plateau. If a guy's off to a hot start, he doesn't stay just even. Either they've learned and they take it to the next step, or they get worn out because that's when their season ends. Football, you have a little bit, you play more games as far as that, but I think it's similar when you get to probably week 8, week 9, is when you see kids that are freshmen that have been playing is you're either going to go up because now I know everything, I realize what's going on, and I've adjusted to the speed, or I've worn out, my body's beat up from a different level of physicality, and they go down a little bit. And you have to kind of prepare for that as coaches. You have to see which guys and, if you need to pull back a little bit on some guys' snap counts and different things. But I want to see if that young group of cornerbacks is ready to take that next level now that they have a half a season of experience.
And to your point, Chuck, and I think we have to credit Greg Burns and the job that he's done over the course of the season. Because like you said, that was an area that we had circled as an area of concern. How is this group going to develop? Are they going to be a liability for this defense? And I would say that they're not. If anything, they've been aggressive and as far as OG and whatnot. So credit to him on that. But as far as the other side of the ball, USC's offense, we might see a little different wrinkle in their run game just because now that Vavae Malepeai is out due to that knee injury. He did have his knee scoped on Tuesday. He was back on Wednesday walking around, so that's at least good news for Vi. Doesn't seem as serious as maybe we had originally thought. But as USC fans have been clamoring for all season, we're going to see more of Marquise Stepp. What do you expect from this run game? And could we see Keenan Christian maybe get some touches as well?
Yeah, potentially. I think you're going to see more than 10 carries for Marquise Stepp. What do you think? I still feel that Stephen Carr is going to start this game, but you're going to see more of Marquise Stepp in there. I mean, just the way you watched some of those runs back where he was dragging. Shotgun did a great film study again. Make sure you check it out. Watching that run, that 19-yard run where he's just dragging defenders with him, and it was like two parties came. Like the first group, like two waves came to your party. The first wave of people, patrons at your party trying to tackle him. They think they got him. He's almost down. Then they kind of let him go or whatever, and he just puts his hand on the ground and keeps going. Then the second wave comes in, and they're trying to tackle him again. It was pretty special to watch. So I think he's got probably 15 carries or so, I think, in him. And if they do run tempo, maybe you'll see some more. Maybe they're not going to run the ball as much. It's really hard to say at this point, but I'm curious to see how they try to attack this Arizona defense, and they have to. Whatever they're doing, they got to put up points. You can't score 27 points in this game. You're going to have to be, you got to get to the 40s, like against Arizona. Like this has to happen. If not, then you're going to have a lot of questions about what this offense is really, able to do this year.
Yeah. I think with the running back, I think, who's going to take that Aka Cedric Ware role? because he was a Arizona killer.
That's true.
He was, he
Good
had
point.
multiple 100-yard games. Is that Marquise Stepp? Is that Stephen Carr? Is that someone else jumping in? I think Keenan Kristen will be brought along similar to how Marquise Stepp was early in the season. Maybe a couple of plays early, and then we'll see how he does. And if he does well, we'll start expanding that role a little bit more. Now, the run you were talking about with Marquise Stepp was incredible, was really impressive to watch. More impressive to me were 2 runs that he had where he showed better vision than he has so far this season. He had an early cut on one of the runs where it was supposed to be a run to the right. He immediately cut up. I think it was his first carry, actually, and he gets 20 yards or so because he reads because they were overplaying, based on the running back alignment. We talked a little bit about it previously, but based on the alignment, USC's basically run in 2 directions based on their alignment. So to break that tendency, he had an early cut. Now, Vi's done this a couple times. Stephen Carr, I think, has done it once previously. But to see him show that, and then later there was a short yardage play where he waited, was patient, and then cut back a little bit and went behind the block of Eric Cromanhook, and I think it was like a 3rd and 1, and he turned it into like another 19-yard gain or something. Those are way more impressive to me because that tells me his game is improving. And that tells you, and from what we saw on Saturday, it tells you the coaches are gaining more confidence in him because against Washington, what was it? First quarter carry. So, hey, that means you've expanded, you're moving into the rotation sooner in the game. Against Notre Dame, it was, hey, we're leaving him in pass situations. We're trusting him to block. And, the play that Keaton Slovis throws a little bit short to Amon-Ra St. Brown that could have been touchdown, that was Marquise Stepp picking up the linebacker blitz there. Did a nice job on the blitz. He got pushed back a little bit, but, he's doing better in the other facets of the game, which is only going to help him earn more and more playing time. So I think that his game is expanding, and I think you could see something similar with Keenan Kristen because I talked with Keely about this previously on the Family Feud podcast, is that each of those guys is different. They each can bring a different element. So you can use a guy like Keenan Kristen to be that speed demon, let's change it up type of thing, versus, when you had Stepp, it was, hey, let's bring in a bruiser to change things up. They can all be change-ups to each other. So when you have that, I think that lends, a better possibility for freshmen to get an opportunity like, hey, let's try this out and see what we can do with this, especially if you're gashing them a little bit and suddenly you're like, okay, one of those plays like that Marquise had, where he one cut and he was up and it was 20 yards until he touched somebody. Well, now you use Keenan Kristen's speed on that, and it's 25 yards before somebody touches him. And if he makes that guy miss, she's gone.
If he makes that cut, though, that's
true.
Know if he's
and that's the thing. You see how those guys react in the game, and the game will slow down for them as they go. And that's what I think you saw with Marquise Stepp. That's why his role has expanded. I've been really impressed with him the last couple of weeks. The things he's added to his game in just a short time.
Now, it goes without saying, but of course this is a must-win game for USC just because they need to win in the Coliseum, get back on a winning streak if they can, but also just what it means for the Pac-12 South and what Clay Helton has probably put himself in a corner a little bit, just saying that they're going back to the Pac-12 championship game. They want to play in a Rose Bowl. USC has to get it done, right, Ryan? Yeah. There's no other option.
Now, there's no other option for the rest of the season. You got to win all these games. You can't lose to Arizona. You can't even lose to Oregon at this point. I mean,
really?
I don't think you can. I mean, if you're Clay Helton, you want to keep your job. I think you have to win out. And Utah, I'm not sure. They got some tough games. If they keep playing the way they've been playing, you can't really count on them losing another game. So you got the tiebreaker. I mean, there's the potential where Utah loses one of them to Washington or something like that, and then USC maybe loses to Oregon and wins the rest of the games and can still make it to. But if you're kind of limping into the Pac-12 championship, I just don't think that's good enough right now. Fans don't want to be 3-3 after a 5-7 season. You can look ahead and say, yeah, you could sweep the rest of the games, but how likely is that? I mean, there's always those plays at the end of the game. Things are close. I mean, you watch a Herm Edwards team. They're like an NFL squad. Like, they're going to play you to a field goal game at the end, and they tend to win those. They're good at winning the close games at the end. USC hasn't been as good at winning some of those close games. So it always seems to be on the wrong end of that. So I don't think you can count on winning all these, but you got to just do them. It's the coach speak. You got to do them one at a time. If you can't take care of Arizona at home on homecoming, you got some serious problems.
Yep.
I mean, they have serious problems regardless.
They're serious problems.
Well, I mean, to go back to the homecoming theme, Chris had a little snarky question on YouTube. He says, are we expecting the Coliseum to be half empty for homecoming?
We like to say half full, and just to be a little more
well
positive.
Done. Well done.
It's hard to say. I mean, homecoming, you want to get some more people there. But, at least the people we see on the message boards and on social media and stuff, I mean, there's a lot of people that are upset. So I'm curious to see what the attendance is going to be. I don't know. I'm not super optimistic. I mean, what was do you remember what the last game was? It was like a little over 50,000 or something.
I never pay attention to the attendance numbers, sorry.
And I don't know how accurate they are, too. So it'll probably look like kind of the other ones where there's a bunch of empty seats. But I don't know. We'll see. See, maybe the fans will get fired up and want to come out there.
Maybe. We shall see.
They did run some kind of flash sale this week, so it's probably not a great sign. USC sent out an email like right after the loss, like, hey, 20% off tickets for the Arizona game. So I'm guessing there's a bunch of seats that they need to sell.
Not what you want to see there. But let's go to a Facebook question from Jeff Torres, who says, if Slovis continues to play well, could you see JT transferring next year?
I mean, it's possible, but again, I said this as soon as JT got hurt. It's a long season. If Slovis, suffers a torn Achilles this week, that's a year and a half situation a lot of times. So there's a ton of possibilities that could happen. Someone could decide that they just want to give up football and go play, go do something else. Like you don't know. It's such a long way away that it's hard to say right now. Those are like end of the season questions. Like, okay, you've seen what's happened. Now let's assess. I would rather put those questions off until later in the season. Because I don't think JT is transferring right now, as he's going through his rehab and stuff. I don't see that happening at all. So at the earliest, it would be postseason. So I'm going to wait on that one before I even try to answer that.
I would say Slovis probably has to win a road game before you want to talk about the starter transferring.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Well, he also has another question who says, if we change back to a pro-style offense next year with a new coach, who has the advantage, JT or Keaton? Shotgun, this is a hypothetical special for you. No, many hypotheticals.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
We need a better question screener, apparently.
Oh, wow. Shots fired.
I guess you would go with JT in that situation just because that's what he's played in. He played in some of it last year.
I don't know.
A little bit of experience.
That's like... There's like 50 things that have to happen for that.
Sure. So let's move on to our next question. It comes from Marcellus Austin on YouTube, who says, I've never heard another top program talk about injuries. For the fourth best roster, why is our depth so bad?
You can start if you want. I've got a theory on this myself.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the depth is bad. I mean, there's some really good players in the secondary. I mean, we've seen a lot of the young players play, and they played well. I mean, Jacob Eason didn't have a great game. Ian Book wasn't, all that efficient when he was throwing the ball, and yet, banged up secondary. I think USC has the players. Are you trusting all the players to play? Do you want to put them in there? I think sometimes they do it just when it's like that's the last resort, but there's other opportunities where they're not putting them in where they could have been.
And part of that is they don't know that if they can trust guys because they haven't seen them in game situations. Because they can't blow anybody out to give guys game situations. And they don't rotate enough. I've championed it for, 5 years now, 5 to 8 plays. I say 5 to 8 plays. If someone had a recorder on how many times I've said 5 to 8 plays, I think it would be, a ridiculous amount. But if you can get guys in just for a couple plays, a guy like Marquise Stepp, getting him in for 5 to 8 plays early in the season, and you've seen how much growth he's had. Now his role has expanded, and that's what happens sometimes. Yeah. Now running backs are easier to rotate than a linebacker or a cornerback or something. But you've seen Chris Steele was getting some rotation early in the season. He's been phenomenal for them. He's really stepped up. He gave up a big catch in that Fresno State game. He gave up 52-yarder. Since then, barely anything. So when you give guys a little bit of experience, and it can be tough, there are growing pains. Chase Williams, growing pains. Yeah. He gave up a touchdown against Fresno State. He missed the tackle at Washington, which was partly him, partly Marlon getting pushed out of the, opening up that hole a little bit. And you're going to have to suffer through those. Can you find that fine line where you can trust your guys, young guys, and the guys around them to step up just a little bit around them so that they can, make up just a little bit, an extra 1%, then you get those guys experience and the game slows down for them. And then when something, God forbid someone gets hurt, you're able to step somebody in without a big, fall off.
Yeah, Max Williams, you got a chance because of someone had a violation of team rules. And then you're like, oh, he gets a sack, forces a fumble. You're like, okay, he can play, but you wouldn't have known that unless he kind of got in there.
And some of them is like, some guys are ready. We just haven't seen them, so we don't know. Like last year in the Notre Dame game, Chase Williams comes in. He started at safety, and then they moved him to nickel after Jonathan Lockett got hurt. Jordan McMillan comes in, a walk-on, has an interception.
So Talanoa Hufanga, prior to that, we didn't even know he was like third on the depth chart.
Yeah, so you see guys
that was weird.
working their way in and have been successful, but sometimes there's some growing pains. If you can get those you can get some guys a little bit of time early, I think it's less likely that those growing pains are big time growing pains, big touchdowns or stuff, big explosive plays that are given up.
In that same vein, Jasper Smith on YouTube says, besides Marlon, Jay Tufele, and Brandon Keely, are there any other legit defensive tackles on the roster that can come in and play? These guys have been great, but seem to wear down due to lack of depth. And you kind of saw that in the last drive when USC had their backups, and they just weren't as effective as those starting guys.
And M. Mosley on Periscope wants to know what's the deal with Trevor Trout, so maybe along the same lines.
And Trevor Trout hasn't been a guy in the rotation at all. You've seen Nick Figueroa has been in there, and he's gotten some playing time, but he's not he's not a nose tackle. Yeah. So, you saw he actually got double teamed on one play against Notre Dame and just got blown off the ball. Yeah, he was like 7 yards off. And now Notre Dame did that to Marlon Tuipulotu some too, and I think Marlon faced more double teams than he's faced all season. I don't know the exact stat on that one. I haven't tracked that, but it just seemed like there were a ton of double teams directed at him. They wanted to make someone else make a play because he's been so good this season, and I think that's going to continue because of teams seeing that Notre Dame tape and going, okay, let's attack him and force someone else to make the play. Let's force a linebacker to step up in the hole or a secondary defender to come up. So I think you'll see more of that, and that is taxing. It's taxing when you're taking on two guys on a play. So how did they do that? And I talked with Chad K this week, and he said, you probably saw that Brandon Keely played as many plays as he has. It was his most plays this season, not in his career, but it was the most plays he had played so far this season because he's a guy that's going to have to rotate in a little bit more to help out Marlon in those situations. Can they get another guy? Is it Nick Figueroa? Jacob Lichtenstein being injured. People forget he was
playing.
He came on at the end of last season.
Yeah, he was a major factor in that rotation towards the end of the year, and he was playing those interior positions, not the outside. He was playing inside. So he's been out with the calf injury, and it just has not progressed for him. The last time I talked to him was early in the season, but he was just kind of you could tell there was devastation that had not been improving the way it should be. So I don't know if he's even an option to come back this season. We still have not seen him practice or anything. Yeah. So those are the top guys there, and then Trevor Trout is also in that mix as well. I feel like I'm forgetting one younger guy, but Stanley Tafu, he's been on the inside as well. You could see it. Do you trust those guys? That becomes the question. Can they get in and play a little bit?
Yep. We have
Dejon Benton as well.
Yeah.
So Dejon showed some flashes early in the season, especially with his pass rush.
Yeah.
But then he was out for I don't know, like 3 weeks, maybe.
It was like 2 weeks.
So getting him back in conditioning and all that stuff, and where does he stand as far as the playbook and all the other different things that go along with freshmen. There's a couple bodies back there, but no one that they trust yet to move in there, I don't think.
In the same vein, I keep talking about this, but we know that Christian Rector is just not 100% with that ankle, and we've seen him struggle to close ground, have that lateral speed, but I don't think USC's coaches necessarily trust anyone behind him on the depth chart to replace him. How do you see that struggle between playing a Christian Rector who's not 100% and maybe going out on a limb and trusting someone that you're not exactly sure about behind him on the depth chart?
Do you think like a Hunter Echols would come in there? Or it just seems like he's dropped off a little bit because.
So the question is, what are you expecting as far as on the other side? Because they've kind of changed who was the next guy up on the edge, based on the game. So I don't know if it's they've given guys chances and they're just not satisfied, or they're looking at it as an individual matchup and, hey, Connor Murphy works better this game. We need speed this game. Let's go with Hunter Echols. Caleb Tremblay, we need pass rushing. How you kind of, if they're going by matchups that way, or if they have a pecking order and just guys are, kind of rotating and no one's kind of taking over the next spot. Ideally for the coaching staff, someone would just force them to have a decision. I would have done this around the bye, and especially since Notre Dame is a non-conference. I know it's a rivalry game, but I would have sat Christian Rector. I would have tried to rest him as much as possible for 3 weeks in a row, hope that ankle gets better, because you can just see, there are times when he tries to turn the corner and he can't move. It won't bend the way he wants it to be able to, and he can't change his momentum as quickly. There was a play where he dropped back in a zone blitz, so he drops back in zone coverage. Ian Book comes up and he goes to Rector's right, and Rector tries to turn, and it's a slow process. You can tell that it's definitely affecting him.
So this was another reason you're going to watch. So if you're not a VIP member to USCFootball.com, you should be. Shotgun's film study is great. I mean, we were showing Taylor Mays some of the film earlier today when he was in there when I was watching his film study. But that play where Ian Book, I think he went to his left, scrambled to his left, and Christian Rector had dropped back like into some kind of a coverage area. Mm-hmm. And didn't, as Ian Book's running towards him, there's no one in between the two. He wasn't advancing, which you would, try to, slow him down or cut off an angle or something. He just kind of let Ian Book run right at him, and then it just let him run right by him. It just didn't look like he was going to be able to make that kind of move in space. I don't even know why you would put him in that kind of situation of having him play in space. But you're right, too. It seemed like if he's going to be that hampered by the injury, you might as well play somebody else.
That's what I would have done, with the bye week and with a non-conference game. I would have tried to take it and say, but you never know. It could be something where like the situation is, this is a complete hypothetical situation, but hey, someone needs surgery after the season. It's not going to get worse, but it can't get better until the surgery happens. I don't know that that's the case because it's a sprained ankle necessarily, but maybe it's something like that. I don't know for sure, but you can tell he's not playing at 100% for sure. And it's kind of disappointing because
you want him to have a good year.
Yeah, it's his redshirt senior year, and I was expecting a big year out of him. He's a great kid. I expected him those pressures that he was getting last year, to become sacks this season. And he can't get the pressures now just because he can't turn the corner as quickly. And so you need him to – this is where he has to learn – these are my limitations. I've got to be able to play within those limitations, which is tough to do on the fly. But you say, okay, this is what my body can do. That's when, Clay Helton said on the reverse, so he got outflanked. Christian Rector did. On the reverse, Clay Helton said we had absolutely the perfect call. That's his words, not mine.
Yeah.
But he said they had absolutely the perfect call. They were bringing pressure from underneath, and that Christian Rector has to go 7 yards upfield and just kind of be waiting there. Now, if he does that, that forces Lindsey to go back inside, so he either makes a tackle there or someone else is probably there to help out. But he has to know that, okay, I've got to do exactly what the role is. I can't trust what I used to could do. I can't trust what I previously was able to do athletically if my body's not allowing me to do that right now. So that's a kind of learning curve that he has to do as well if he's going to be in there.
I have a hard time calling anything a perfect call if you give up a touchdown. Like, I don't care. I mean, then your calls are pretty bad. Like if your perfect call gives up a touchdown, that's not so good.
I've seen some wacky plays. You're just like, oh man, how was that a touchdown? That's not one. That's not one of them.
It. That was just like you got completely outflanked. The guy just blew by everybody. Like if it was like you had the perfect call, you had this guy sacked for 10 yards, and somehow he slipped out, and the ball bounced sideways, and the wide receiver picked it up and ran. Okay, fine. But that was not what happened in this case.
To bring my point back, it was I was saying ideally you could sit him for a couple weeks, and someone else just impresses you so much that you have the conversation of, okay, who do we want to play when Rector comes back and is healthy? That's obviously not the situation, but they need someone to step up there. They have to give guys opportunities to be able to step up there too. So I think Caleb Tremblay is a guy that they were kind of pushing and hoping would step up. He's been in the pass rush situation, so has Hunter Echols. So maybe one of those guys or Connor Murphy. Those are the three options, and none of them have made those impact plays yet. Hunter Echols had a sack and a half. Caleb Tremblay's had I think a sack as well. Connor Murphy has a sack, but they need consistency. It's more than one play.
Yeah. Little Periscope love. Real quick, Mr. Wei Wan.
Shouts to them.
Mr. Wei Wan, good morning from Taiwan. So
wow.
Thank you for watching.
Viewers.
He said Silver Lining for SC on Pac-12 Network. It's available on YouTube, Pac-12 International. So if you happen to live in Taiwan, you can watch this game easier than anyone that lives in Los Angeles.
True.
Not anyone, but most people.
Yeah. Most people. Let's go to a Facebook question from John, who says, has USC ran any trick plays this year? I don't recall one. Could they roll a couple out this Saturday with all the injuries?
Have there been? There was.
If you want to count they tried to do one for the punt returns.
They've tried to do the punt stuff a couple times. But like
really
offensive trick plays?
Not offensive. They also sent Matt Fink out to potential fake field goal attempt against BYU.
When he was the holder, but BYU called a timeout.
It was Keely noted on that one. What's Matt Fink doing out there?
I was like, hold up.
Which BYU just had too many people on the field. And
So
they
just-
ended up having to burn a timeout for
Really
it.
interesting, because I was like, that's pretty on.
It was not because BYU noted.
They were like,
oh,
"Where's Ben Griffiths? What?"
Yeah. No, that was not it.
Interesting.
It seemed like their confusion ended up leading to USC not running that. Now, granted, they go for it on 4th and 1 to pick it up, and it worked out for USC in that regard. But not really. We haven't really seen not even a ton of misdirection type stuff.
reverses or
Yeah.
anything. There would just not been a lot of it.
I'm ready for double passes. I'm ready for whatever. You saw a little
Tyler
bit more.
Vaughn's throwing a ball down the field or something. I want to see that.
There was a little bit more attacking the edges this game with wide receiver screens and different things. So maybe they're starting to open things up. And part of it might also be that can you get 2 games in a row with the same quarterback? It makes it more difficult to run specific things when you can't keep a guy not under center, behind center.
Behind center.
Since they're a shotgun all the time.
True, your namesake. Let's go to a YouTube question from Don, who says, in case Shotgun hasn't heard, Dorian Hewitt is starting at corner. He never mentions him, but he will surprise you all. Trust me. Number 22, fight on.
If he's starting, that means ITS is not going to play. So he's a game time decision. Dorian Hewitt is the second string guy. We've known about this for a little while. Chris and I actually talked about before the Utah game, I want to say, the game that Isaac Taylor Stewart set out with a concussion. It's like, okay, what are you going to do if this happens? And then someone did get hurt, and we were talking about it. And Dorian Hewitt has been practicing with the second team since that situation had come up. With I think the week before someone was out, and then Isaac Taylor Stewart was out from the BYU game to that one. So and Greg Johnson was out also. So those type things, or Greg Johnson came back from the BYU game. So it was like if he's out, what's the next plan of action? And so we've been watching Dorian Hewitt.
But he was playing safety early. Yeah.
But he's been the number 2 cornerback for a little while now, opposite of Chris Steele. So some of the other reporters were a little confused by that earlier this week in practice. And someone asked Clancy, "It's like, why'd you make the move with Dorian Hewitt or something like that?" And he's like, "That was a while back,
a month ago, yeah."
Yeah. So this is something we have been watching Dorian Hewitt, and he's been on special teams a little bit. He hasn't played the last 2 games, I want to say. I know he didn't play this past week. He was there, but he's a guy that is. I think he's one of those fringe guys. It's like, do we push him over 4 games? Do we hold him back? I think he's at 3 right now. I can look it up in a second.
If he has to start in this game, he's probably going to.
No, if he has to come in for cornerback, I think that's why he's only played 3 on special teams, is because they don't want to use that 4th one and then get stuck and say, oh, we have to use him in this game, and now we have used his red shirt, in like the UCLA game or something, last game of the season. You're just like, we're stuck. We have to put him in, and we've burned his red shirt when we could have been using him, for the last 5 games or something. So yeah, he has played in 3 games so far. He hasn't played the last 2 weeks. So I think they're saving one for an if necessary to an extent, and saying, if we can redshirt him, then let's do that. If not, and I don't know that for sure, but just the way his games have played out, he played the first 2 games, sat out a game, played against Utah, and hasn't played the last 2 weeks. So it seems kind of like that might be the strategy.
Tito on YouTube says, if you are USC on offense, would you start with the run game to open the pass, or the other way around?
I mean, technically they've started with the run game the last 2 weeks with 1 run and then not run the ball again for the rest of the drive, even though the opening drives have moved. Start with the run game, especially when these teams keep coming out with 5-man boxes, 6-man boxes. Force them to adjust instead of just adjusting to them all the time.
Yeah, I like that. Just whatever, look up. Oh, is there 3 down linemen and everyone else is dropping back? Just run the ball for a while. And I even start Marquis Stepp and just pound for a while. You let him run 3 times in a row, and you're probably getting 25 yards, and you probably adjust. They're going to have to adjust on the defensive side.
I mean, look at all the early runs from Stephen Carr in the past game. I mean, he was getting 12-yard runs, 7-yard runs, just over and over, and it's like they would use it and then go away.
Yeah, and
use
go
one
straight ahead and not sideways.
So there was
Especially with Marquis Stepp.
Well, there was a question earlier. I don't know if I put it on here, but it was like, why are we running sweeps with Marquis Stepp? Well, because if you don't, then they know where exactly you're running every single time. You have to be versatile enough to do everything. That's the expansion of his role. Why is he staying into pass block? The other guys may be better.
You can't just only put him in every time.
You can't go key on him in 2 seconds.
Exactly. So I know people get upset, hey, that's not the ideal play for Marquis Stepp to run, but he can still run that. He is nimble enough. He showed on the run you were talking about earlier, the plowing through people. He was patient enough to wait for 2 blocks to open up a hole. He stepped over some guy's feet, showing some nimbleness. Then he went to the outside. Like he is plenty capable of doing those things. Can he do all the things? And that's been the big question. And he's slowly progressing. And I think that's why you're seeing now he's running the sweep. Now he's doing those things. Stephen Carr this past game had a couple really nice runs inside the tackle. It's not like he can only run outside the tackle.
Right.
There was one of them where he should have been tackled for a loss. Goes around 1 block, powers through 2 more tackles, and picks up like 6 or 7 yards when it should have been a tackle for loss. Like he's not just a finesse back either; he's got some power too. So, and I think when someone like Marquise Stepp comes in and he powers through a couple tackles, if you're Stephen Carr, what do you want to do? I want to power through somebody too.
That's true. I could do that.
And the other way around. Yeah. I think when Stephen Carr makes a guy go flying that way and he takes off this way, Marquise Stepp, and that's something he said earlier this week, is like one of the things that he needs to work on in his game is that he can't always run over people. So when he gets out in open space, like that first run, it's just him and a safety. If he can make that guy miss, instead of trying to run him over, because when you try to run people over, it slows everything down. Yeah. Other people from behind you catch up. If you can make a miss and go, you score.
Now, the interesting thing is someone had brought that up with Mike Jinks, and before Jinks could even finish, Marquise Stepp said that he wanted to improve and not just bulldoze people. Jinks goes, well, what I think Stepp meant to say was, and kind of just like negated that whole thing. So what they want Stepp to do going forward, I'm not exactly sure, because they're not on the same page there.
No.
But as far as continuing the offensive theme, Mona on Facebook says, what happened to the air raid? And we've also gotten a lot of questions about people generally asking, hey, we were sold this idea preseason and we haven't necessarily seen it so far. What exactly have you guys been seeing from this offense or lack thereof?
Yeah, Mona, thanks for the question. Yeah, it's I think JT Daniels going down in the first game of the season, I think certainly changed a lot of things. And then, you've seen Matt Fink. It's sort of just been you're kind of going by the seat of your pants as far as the offense goes. What's going to work this week? Adjusting to, twice in games, you've had to adjust to a new quarterback coming in there. So that's always not the greatest situation. We've seen a Matt Fink go, beat Utah, the best win USC has on the season, and look more like this offense did from last year than what the air raid, is kind of supposed to be. We've seen them struggle on the road. I think it's just sort of a mixed bag, and a lot of it has to do with what's going on with the quarterback position. But did we expect to only see like your top 3 wide receivers catching all the passes? No, we thought there was going to be a rotation and everyone's coming in. Did we expect to see as much running of the football as we've seen? No. And did we expect to see USC reacting kind of, I don't know if you say poorly, but just not reacting as positively towards certain coverages when the whole theme coming into this was, it doesn't matter what other people do, we're going to do what we do. Well, if they're dropping 8 back in the coverage, they've changed what they've done. So we've seen opponents' defenses do things to alter what USC wants to do, which is something I really didn't expect.
I thought that let's point out first that Keaton Slovis really showed a vast improvement against the drop coverages and stuff that Notre Dame was doing versus his game against BYU. Now, let's not forget, it's been that long since he really played. Keely reminded me earlier. It's been over a month since he had practiced or played. So
he had two snaps, and then it was done.
Yeah, 2 top 10 snaps. That's what prepared him to be good in that Notre Dame game. Was those 2 snaps? No, I thought he looked really good. He didn't force anything. There are times when you have to be able to take that check down, and that was something that they were kind of railing on against Matt Fink to an extent, is that sometimes he was forcing the ball. Now, Matt Fink has all the confidence in the world in his receivers, and he's willing to throw it up to them, and receivers love that. But sometimes when they're dropping 8, the best thing to do is to check it down to the running back, let a guy like Marquise Stepp or Vi or Stephen Carr make the first guy miss and pick you up 6 yards. Keaton Slovis did that in the Notre Dame game. There was 1 or 2 check downs where that happened. So I think that was a big step for him. I think that because of the inexperience of those guys, it took them some time. Whereas if JT was in the whole time, I don't think there's that big learning curve and that big jump that you have to make, which is why I think this team would be in a much better position with JT just because of the experience he already had, and you didn't need to learn against BYU, learn against Washington to be ready to go against a team like Notre Dame.
Yeah. And Mona, real quick, I thought they'd throw the ball to the running backs a lot more than what they have so
True.
far.
I believe someone on Facebook also asked us how we've seen a wheel route to running back so far this season.
There's been some dump offs, and not really like you haven't seen a running back like streaking down the sideline. Well, there might have been one. No, maybe not.
No, not so far. Not that I can recollect. I've seen it in practice previously, but nothing in a game. But there's been that's something that maybe you would see out of a two-back set. You can keep one guy in, or have a short option and then send another guy. They haven't really run two-back sets since the first game or two of the season. They've run 0 the last 3 games at least. So they haven't really run a bunch of 2 tight end sets either. So there's different things they can still do in this offense that they haven't been doing. So the easy thing to look at is just, if they don't turn the ball over, they give themselves a lot better chance, and that's why the offense hasn't been excelling. Another thing, though, is partially the tempo. Graham Harrell said this week, last year, I think he said last year at North Texas they were getting like 19 possessions a game. I think was the number he used. He said this year it's 11 possessions. Now haven't checked those stats for sure, but I believe those are the numbers he said.
But 8 less possessions is a lot of
possessions. So 8 less possessions, say you score, we'll say, if there was 9 possessions and you scored on a third of them, even if it's 2 touchdowns and a field goal, 17 more points, that's a ton.
Yeah.
And, what they're scoring right now, if it's 11 versus 19, that's like, was it like 56% or something? It's not a ton. So if you're getting 56% of the points you were scoring last year, then you're like, well, still scoring at the same rate. We're just not getting the ball as much. And he said part of it is that the teams aren't willing to, basically get in a shootout with them. They want to slow the tempo down to an extent. They're trying to slow USC's air raid down. So there's some different things that have happened. I think there's also been an adjustment period for the coaches because you hear USC's, T. Martin used to say this a lot. The players say it a lot. Clay Helton even says it to the team and says, what you see on film, understand that there's probably going to be something different when we get there on Saturday. Teams just do different things against USC.
But that's football. That happens all the time, too.
To an extent. Yeah. The reason, and it might be different at North Texas versus this, I asked Graham Harrell, and he said, towards the end at North Texas, teams started showing new things all the time. But early, if you're USC and you're playing Oregon State versus you're playing Notre Dame, are you going to show new stuff against Oregon State every week? No, we'll use our regular stuff. We're fine. Now, you end up going back to your regular stuff after you run through some stuff. But, yeah, you bring out new stuff for special opponents. USC is always going to be a special opponent because of the athletes they have on the field.
Yeah.
So you design certain things to counteract the athletes that they have, the talented players they have. So that's why you see a bunch of new stuff. So I think there's been a little bit of an adjustment period there for the new coaching staff, the new coaches on the offensive side, is that, okay, we've got to decipher what they're doing early in the game instead of just knowing from what we've seen on film previously.
And I think the bend but don't break stuff doesn't help either because you're giving up yards, not necessarily as many points, but you're letting opposing offenses control the ball more as opposed to forcing a bunch of 3 and outs. We probably got to do some rapid fire.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go to, we have a live caller on the line, and then we're going to go into rapid fire. So let's do those things. Hello, you're live on television.
Dollywood to Hollywood greetings, y'all. It's the Cattleman from Tennessee.
Hello.
Hey, first, Ryan, you got to love those zebras up there at Notre Dame Stadium, don't you?
They're pretty
Brian
good.
Kelly, 12th man on the field. Brian Kelly, 12th man on the field, swallowed the whistle.
Those are Pac-12
only
officials.
At Notre Dame. Only at Notre Dame. Oh, really? I was unaware of that.
Yeah,
only at
Pac-12
Notre Dame,
officials,
though,
yeah.
right, Ryan?
Yeah. Pac-12 officials,
Maybe they
man.
drip some. Maybe they drip some crazy water on them before the game. But it's funny how the zebras do crazy things at Notre Dame Stadium. Hey, one other thing, Ryan. I'm your big Bill King caller, and I need to get you on the Bill King show. I know you got to wake up awful early for that, but looking to get you on the Bill King show.
Yeah, just tweet at Bill. He'll have me on. I've been on there for a while. My wife's in Tennessee right now, so if you bump into her, say hello.
Yeah. I call him every day, so we'll get you on there quick.
Okay.
One thing for you, Keely. I got you a one-way ticket from LAX to Nashville Airport. Biscuits and gravy at Loveless Cafe, Keely. All the strawberry jam you can eat. I got you sold yet?
No. I mean, at least you didn't propose to me this time, so I'll take it. We took a notch down. That's fine.
Hey, I don't think they have any lox salmon bagels at the Loveless Cafe in Nashville, but I'm pretty sure they got biscuits and gravy though.
Well,
all right,
good.
guys. Enough fun and games. Here's my question. Guys, former USC coaches. Pete's killing it again with the Seahawks. What else is new? Sark's killing it, as you guys say, with Saban. But guys, I'm your resident Kiffin fan. He's having a pretty good year. I'm curious to what you think about the job Kiffin's doing, Ryan, and love the show. Watch it and consume it every time. Take care, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for calling in.
Honestly, I've not paid any attention to FAU, but you didn't mention Ed Orgeron, who's
That's a good
number
one
2
there.
team in the country for LSU. I don't know. How is FAU doing? I have no clue.
FAU
idea.
is 4-2 right now.
Oh, not
They
bad.
lost to Ohio State and UCF to start the season, but won 4 straight.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, Lane's sticking it out there, so that's good. I mean, they had a rough season last year, but yeah, good for Lane. You love Lane. He'll get a job somewhere. Like, there's going to be some openings.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
He's too intelligent of a coach. You know, if
Yeah.
he can get out of his own way. And I think he's doing that much better as far as what we hear from way across the coast at Florida Atlantic than you know what he was doing at Tennessee or at USC. You know, I think his ego's gotten out of his way a little bit.
But Eddie O, man, that's the guy you got to watch for.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty
Doing
crazy there. Congrats to him. Let's go to a YouTube question. We're rapid fire.
And,
Shotgun.
and also John Robinson's on that staff as well, technically.
That's
True.
true, yeah.
Yeah, so another former USC coach.
True. Shotgun. Rapid fire.
Oh, you're throwing it to
No,
me.
no. I'm not. I'm just telling you to get in line.
Okay.
Jerry on YouTube says the question the last couple of weeks have been, where is Tyler Vaughns? Which last week you saw him. He had some catches.
Touchdown.
A touchdown.
I think this question is coming because looking back at his game log, he's got 4 catches each of the last 3 weeks. Each time it's been between 44 and 49 yards. Now he did have a touchdown against Utah. Did have a touchdown against Notre Dame. When they're bracketing Michael Pittman on the other side, I think you got to go to Tyler Vaughn and you got to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Force them to change their defense, and that's something that USC hasn't necessarily done. They don't do motions to try to get a guy like Pittman away from the coverage. They're just going to say, okay, this is what you're giving us. This is what we'll take. Now, it can work just fine. You see Amon-Ra St. Brown had over 100 yards. He's a guy that certain teams try to take away. I think it was Stanford try to take him away in particular, and then Michael Pittman and Tyler Vaughns go off.
Yeah.
So when you have 3 great guys like that, it makes it that much easier as a play caller. Like, we'll just take what they give us. But you would like to see all of them get involved, find ways to do that with those screen passes and things where it's hard to tackle Michael Pittman. It's hard to tackle Tyler Vaughn. As long as you get one block in front of them, that's 6 yards almost every time.
Yeah.
He's terrible at rapid fire. But Tyler Vaughn was held the first 2 times.
I tried.
He was
I
targeted.
thought you said get ready for rapid fire.
No,
You didn't say that it
rapid fire.
was.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire right now. It's almost 8 o'clock. Tyler Vaughn was held the first 2 targets he had. So there was basically pass interference.
Ish.
He could have had another touchdown, but this was the
Yeah. I mean, you saw that. Like
see
that
the
was-
shoulder pad.
Yeah. So.
But that's the way the game was called the entire day. Yeah.
True. Our buddy Alan on Facebook says, "Hi, party people. Do you get any sense from the staff that they know that they're working on borrowed time?"
I mean, not necessarily that they say we got to win or I'm going to lose my job, but that's evident with coaches. There's no coaches just so delusional. It's like, it doesn't matter what I do, I'll still be here.
Yeah. I think they know.
Bob on Facebook says, "A bulging disc does not sound positive. Does it look like much more time for OG than what we think?"
I mean, it's the same injury that he's been dealing with. It was the back spasms. I think the spasms are coming from the disc, not being perfectly aligned. So I think it's just a continuation. So he came back from that, was good for a half, 3 quarters actually. I think it was late in the third quarter that he suffered, re-injured it. So he likes to come up and help out in the run game and stuff. So he's willing to take on contact, so it can be.
He's a physical dude for not being that big, so it's could impact him. We'll see.
And also, football is a physical game.
Yeah,
It is. The Mr. Matt C90 has asked this multiple times, so I want to get to it. He says, "Question: What does this?"
I was not going to answer it, or not going to bring it up just because he had asked it so many times.
No, I
but
reward
it's okay.
persistence. He says, "Question: What does this team need to do to beat Alabama next year? As a hardcore SC fan, I love big games. However, it seems like we blow too many of them. Please give me your thoughts. Thanks."
Alabama,
It's a long
We
way
talking
away.
about Bama?
It's a long way away, but I would start with win the turnover margin, which they haven't done how many games now?
19.
19.
Yeah, so that's going to make it that much tougher.
Yeah,
So it starts with that, I think. I can say what is going to be a superior athletic team than USC is. They'll just have more talent overall. They're higher ranked in the 24/7.
there's going to be a lot. This team will be a lot different by the time they play Alabama.
Could be.
A lot different.
Could be. Jasper Smith on YouTube says, "Will USC have a QB commit in the 2020 class?"
Could be.
I don't see it happening.
You don't think Stroud, CJ Stroud? No.
It's way late to offer him. But they offered running backs today, too, from the 2020 that are committed to Cal. So I really like Chris Street at J. Sarah, but it's really late for that offer, having talked to him previously.
And who knows? Like, there could be some changes at the top, and then that could change everything. So,
someone asked, who are some names that we might that we haven't heard of that we might see on Saturday, particularly freshmen?
Dorian Hewitt is one we talked about. I mean, some of the guys that have been playing on special teams, Raylan Goforth could be a guy in the linebacker mix.
Yeah.
Britton Allen's been playing on special teams. Kalana Makala, had played in the last game. He's probably a guy that people were like, who's 23?
Yeah.
Apparently, Greg Burns was who's Kalana.
Yeah,
He must have a different name
I had
for
asked
him.
about
I asked
Kalana.
who he was, and I covered him at the Polynesian Bowl. Yeah, we were there, right? Covering him, and he was someone that Blair Angulo texted us and said, hey, watch for this dude. USC gives him a late offer, and he commits, and then he was playing against Notre Dame. So.
And he was really good in the Poly Bowl, so we were singing his praises as well. So
yeah.
He played well in that game, did his job. He didn't do anything spectacular or anything, but did his job.
Jeff on Facebook says, is Brew McCoy an option at all this year?
No.
I would say no.
He still has not practiced, so that's not right.
Yeah.
Kyle Ford, on the other hand, continuing to get closer.
Yes.
He could be a guy that you see play by the end of the year.
Because then if you bring one of those running backs that were injured back into the mix, they can sit on the bench with the other running backs that don't get to play. So that's how they would be in the mix.
What?
Whoa.
Sorry, no.
The running backs and the wide
running backs, wide receiver. So you get another wide. I'm out of it. You get another wide receiver back for a minute. You're like, oh, Kyle Ford. Yeah, okay, he'll be on the bench behind Munir McClain and John Jackson and all those guys. Like, none of those guys are playing. Like, it doesn't really matter. You're only playing your top three dudes.
John Jackson got a series this past game. It's the first time that they've actually given a series to someone as a backup.
David on Facebook says, status on Jordan Iosefa.
Still, I would guess a couple weeks still away, and definitely not available this week for sure.
Yeah.
I'm guessing not available next week just from seeing the little bit of work that we've seen pre-practice and talking to him just a little bit after the Notre Dame game. But maybe that ends up being 4 games at the end of the season, and then he can still redshirt. It's still a question mark there. It's just
because he played as a true freshman, so he can still redshirt.
He still has a redshirt available, so we'll see.
Sean wanted to know if rugby-style tackling hurts USC's defense in the long run.
It hasn't hurt the Seahawks defense in the long run.
Yeah.
That was the Pete Carroll thing. He was really into that when it first started. So, I don't think you can say that. Just consistent tackling.
That, though. Like, they got to,
They just got to tackle.
Yeah.
Frank says, who do you think will get the lion's share of the carries this week, or will they try to force the pass on the DBs?
I mean, how many yards is Arizona giving up?
Give it a few. No, I think
Ryan's ready to wrap this show up.
I'm ready to wrap it up. We still got to record other stuff after this, just behind the scenes things.
Anyways,
I'm curious to see what they do. I kind of think they'll split it between Carr and Step. I don't think they're going to just give Step everything. But if the passing game is working and they actually can get some success there, you might just see a lot of that because it's sort of like that's what you've been waiting to see, and you might see it.
I think there's going to be more evenly split as far as carries than you saw with Vi and Stephen Carr, especially early in the year. If you remember the Fresno State game, Vi had 23 carries, Stephen Carr had 6. Now Carr had 6 receptions as well, which is something that gets forgotten when people start looking at these rush numbers and, hey, Marquis Stepp's average is higher. Well, the other guys are catching the ball too and getting yards as well. But there were a couple of 23-carry games for Vi, and Stephen Carr still not got to 10 attempts. So I think it'll be much more split. Maybe you see something like 15-15 in there, depending on how much you want to run. I think that plays into it a lot.
They might not get 30 running back carries, so we'll see.
Yeah, the Stanford game, you had Vi with 12 and Stephen Carr with 6. So that was the game where they threw the most.
Yeah.
Ron says, question, why haven't we seen Jude Wolfe? We were promised the Wolf on the show a couple weeks ago.
He was out there.
He played last game. He was in on
the step touchdown.
Step touchdown, yes. And he played a couple other snaps earlier in the game, too.
Yeah, he tweeted out or put an Instagram picture of him like next to Marquis Step. And who was in the background? Our Keely Eure was in the background of the picture.
That's why I knew it was on the step touchdown.
So go to Jude Wolfe's Instagram and you will see a picture of him on the field and Keely filming behind
And
him.
go follow me on Instagram.
And the step touchdown was the only play that went 2 tight ends in that game. So he did play a couple other snaps earlier as a sub.
Yeah. Follow us on Instagram at the Peristyle too. Like
Keely's my name.
we're stepping it up, or at Keely's my name, but at the Peristyle.
Also, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 10,000 followers. Help us with our numbers. It helps us out, and we like providing stuff for you. Let's make this a reciprocal relationship. You know what I mean?
Hit the little likes. We like the likes.
Yeah. Portland West USC says, does any team going forward have a physical nose tackle, defensive tackle who can dominate a 3-man front like BYU?
Not off the top of my head. Oregon has a pretty good one. Blanking on the name right now, but no one's like Fotu at Utah. That's the guy who is a beast. He's gonna be
ASU, I forget
really
the dude.
big.
There's a guy, but he might have got hurt. Cal, pretty good. We'll have to look. Yeah, I don't know about the same kind of like just one dude like that's 345 and just crushes people. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different. But I think that Nealon his game is continuing to evolve and progress too, because remember, he had never played before. He'd only played one season of center in high school. He's barely played football in high school to begin with. He started his 8th grade year playing football, I believe it was, because he came over from Japan. And then he sits 1 year at USC, and now suddenly he's just you're going to go out there and dominate every NFL guy that's thrown in front of you. No, there's a learning curve, and I think he's learned from those things. And he told me a lot of the things that he's worked on since then, the things that it taught him, a little bit about what he has to do better.
Tony on Facebook says, while the general pulse of the fan base is way past Helton and ready to go in a different direction, is there any possible way that the administration is so dysfunctional that they could use all these injuries as an excuse for the less than stellar record and once again do the unthinkable and retain this coaching staff?
Well, you don't know who the AD is, so it's.
I think that's the biggest thing. Is like I think a new AD is going to come in and not be concerned about the other dysfunction. They're going to be like, this is my big hire. This is my opportunity to make a splash, or make, this is going to be attached to me as part of my tenure, because the football coaches always are.
Yeah.
John asked, has anyone called in from Glendora yet? That's when you watch a lot of television. You know that there's a lot of Glendora callers. And no, there hasn't been. No. Okay, people really want predictions, guys. It's that time of the show. I'm going to wrap it up, Shotgun, unless you want to
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
add something in.
I haven't even thought about this. The USC is favored by like 9 or 10. Interesting. I think USC is going to win, but it's not going to be. I think that's going to be a little closer than what It's not going to. I don't think they're going to cover the spread. USC ended up covering. Last week they called
that one.
They were a big underdog last week, so I'm gonna say USC wins 41-35.
That's a high-scoring game. There'll be a lot of highlights to watch.
They're going to score some points, I think, in this.
I just want to say that last week I got my prediction right. I predicted a 4-point loss. They lost by 3. I don't get them right very often, so I need to point it out.
Do your dance. Do your dance.
Nice work.
I'm terrible at this. I think that this is USC should be on red alert though, because the matchup of Khalil Tate versus not having EA, not having Greg Johnson, not having those middle of the field defenders potentially to help corral him. That means your scheme needs to be good and people need to be consistent in what they're supposed to do. And with young players, that's not always the case. So I've got them on upset alert. I don't know. It might be 31-28 Arizona.
Whoa.
Jeez.
I think did I ask you to predict on the podcast?
No.
Oh, well.
And this is why it's just coming straight off the top of my head. Now, USC may also score 55 points, if not 70 in this game. So I have no confidence in that.
What a pendulum swing there.
Arizona defense at all. But can USC take care of the ball? That's been the biggest question.
Arizona's got a field goal kicker that's had a couple of 50-yarders this year. Like they could, even if the drive stalls, they can score.
That's a good point. So does USC.
Yeah. Chase Williams is he's perfect, right, on the year?
Yep.
Don't jinx it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Don't mind.
Keely, what do you got?
49-35 USC.
Oh, so blowout city.
So the same as 2 years ago at USC.
Sure. I guess so.
Really? Is it exact the same score?
49-35, yeah.
I don't know. See, Khalil Tate, Southern California kid, wants to come back to the Coliseum, do something.
Last chance.
And the last time he was in the Coliseum, it was an emotional ending for him. He was sad on the field, and USC players were consoling him.
And he played bad against Washington. So sometimes you see that they bounce back. We'll see.
True.
Red alert.
If the coaching staff allows him to.
Yeah,
That's a good
who
question.
knows? I mean, it could be a dysfunctional mess for Arizona. They were kind of that way in the second half against Washington. So if USC's lucky, Arizona will continue that dysfunctional mess thing, and USC gets an easy win. But if not, who knows?
We shall see. We'll be back on Sunday to break it all down no matter what happens. So we'll see who was more right as far as predictions go. Ryan, we have one final question for you. It's from Christopher, who says, how did it feel to win The Price is Right?
How did it feel? It was amazing. It was one of like the coolest days of my life, to be honest. Yeah, that was 10 years ago now.
Wow.
But it was so fun. You can go on YouTube. It's up there. But yeah, I won everything. I just like you're in the zone. If you're like shooting
Ice in the
hoops.
veins.
Huh?
Ice in your veins.
Yeah, it took me a while to get up there. I was in the first group, and I didn't get up there till the fifth time. The woman next to me kept bidding like $1 more than me, so I could. It was hard to win. But once I got up there, then I just crushed it. I hit the $1 on the wheel. I hit 10,000 on the bonus spin. I won the showcase, all that stuff. It was awesome. Yeah.
Well done.
I watched that thing since I was a little kid, so to be able to like spin the wheel was awesome. So I highly recommend it.
I only got a nickel when I spun the wheel.
You had spun the wheel?
Yeah, because I know people.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, that's true. He's got connections.
When I spun and got a nickel, it got me $10,000, but that was because it was the bonus
nice.
spin. Yeah, because
Well
I had already
done.
done the $1 the first time. So then one more click, I would have got $25,000 instead of 10. But
And then the show wouldn't even exist.
yeah, then I'd retire $25,000.
Oh, wow. Well,
I'd have left.
I think we're
have-
glad that you didn't retire, right?
I would have moved to Mexico.
On $25,000.
Well, alrighty. That's going to wrap it up. The most fired up Ryan was for the whole show was for The Price
I
is
love
Right.
it.
Well done, Christopher. Nice question
Thanks
there.
for, real quick, it was funny. So I remember being at USC practice one day, and I got Mason and Ireland call. So I'm doing the Mason and Ireland show, and I'm giving them an update from practice. And then they started half of the interview ends up being talking about I was just on The Price is Right, and they're like, we have to hear about The Price is Right. It's just so funny. So you're doing a sports radio show, but everybody likes it because it's like everyone's watched it, So
True.
It's part of Americana, too.
yeah.
Very true. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, we'll be back on Sunday to break down our reactions to the game, give you the latest news. So be sure to stay tuned for that, 7 p.m. on wherever you're watching. Thanks so much for watching today, and we'll see you soon. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. I can't say my name right. That's a sign that we should wrap it up. Alrighty, see you guys next time. Bye.